That worked, didn't it?
Are we good now?
Yes.
Hide and face the water. That's cool.
I thank everybody for coming on a beautiful day to say goodbye to Bobby. What I'd like to do is I'd like to read Bobby's obituary and then offer you some of my personal recollections about our friendship, and then ask you to come over here so you can be recorded with your personal recollections and anecdotes of your friendship with Bobby. And when we finish those, we can walk right down this pier, right here, if you'd like to come down there, and we'll lay Bobby to rest in his hometown. Okay? Okay. For those who didn't see Bobby's obituary a year ago when it was published, I will read it for you. Robert Allen Summers passed away on June 15th, 2016 in Beaumont, Texas from complications related to cancer. Bobby was the son of Robert and Vera Summers of Olympia, where he was raised, and he graduated from Olympia High School in 1964. Over his life, Bobby's talents led to a career as an accomplished musician and entertainer and professional journalist. He started piano lessons at age 3, and he studied classical piano through high school, during which time he also formed his first band. He enlisted in the U.S. Air Force in 1966 and served 4 years as a medical technician stationed in England, and immediately resumed his musical career upon his honorable discharge. He played in bands around the country and backed internationally known recording artists. He also worked as a studio musician, an engineer, a record producer, booking agent, band manager, and nightclub manager. Bobby joined Scott McGill's band in 1994 and moved to Beaumont, Texas to begin a period in which he backed such famous artists as Percy Sledge, Johnny Preston, Archie Bell, and the Drells, Clarence Frogman Henry, Marilee Rush, B.J. Thomas, Johnny Tillotson, the Crystals, and the Chiffons, to name but a few. He joined the Beaumont Journal in 1996 as a copy editor. By November of that year, he became the journal's editor and set it on a course to win journalism awards in its class, including first place in Hearst Corporation Distinguished Journalism Awards for community newspapers in 1998 and other recognitions in 1999 and in the year 2000. Prior to his service as the journal's editor, he had served as editor, managing editor, news editor, and staff writer at the University of Houston's Daily Cougar, the school from which he earned his bachelor's degree. He also wrote freelance for the Brazosport Facts, the Galveston Daily News, and he was the editor also of the Brazosport College newspaper, The Navigator. After his time with the Beaumont Journal, Bobby worked in sports information for Lamar University and served as public information officer for Lamar State College, Port Arthur. In recent years, immediately preceding his death, he played bass guitar with Jerry Diaz and Hannah's Reef, specializing in a musical style called Texas Beach music. And he played with that band even as his illness overtook him. Bobby survived by his son, Austin Nuccio, and his wife, Care, of Galveston, Texas, his sister, Claire Peterson, of Fort Myers, Florida. I met Bobby in 1955 when a bunch of us 9-year-olds showed up on the school grounds at McKinley School to turn out for Little League Baseball. Tom Berry, Jim Drescher, Terry Wood, the McGrath brothers, a number of others. Not Tom Drescher, excuse me, Jim Drescher. Yeah, sorry. And we played ball 3 years together. And as our lives sort of diverged at that point, I kept an eye on him, and I noticed that in his high school years, he was pretty much behaving as the big man on campus. He was the model All-American boy. Look at the yearbook if you don't believe me. I mean, he was the Yell King, for crying out loud, and all that stuff. When he graduated high school and went off in the Air Force, and he came back, as I just mentioned, that musical career started. And I got anecdotes about him over the years, but we really didn't reconnect until about 2008, when he was in that job at Lamar University in the public information job, and I was doing the same thing at the business school at Idaho State. So we'd spent hours on the phone comparing notes of these two elderly Americans who were sitting in their last real paying jobs, and what are we going to do when all this ends? And about that time, the recession was hitting colleges and university marketing staff so viciously they were wiping people out. So Bobby and I hatched a scheme that we would create a company, and because we were the only two Mohicans around who knew how to do academic marketing, and we were going to get rich, and we had this big plan. Just didn't complete it, but we would have been rich. Of course we would have, Bobby. Of course we would have. I miss Bobby's wit. I miss his smarts. I stayed at his home twice on my travels through South Central Texas, and he stayed with me over the week of the class of 1964 50th reunion. And just like Bobby, we went out on my patio on a number of occasions and partook of the herb, and as Bob Marley would say, we reasoned together. I miss my friend, really. Who would like to come up here now? Richard Larson.
My name is Rich Larson, and had the pleasure of being the oldest guy in the first band Bobby ever had in Olympia High School, and two of the other original founding band members are here, and we've been sharing stories about Bobby. One that came to mind was we had this huge set of steps to go up at a dance club down in Hopium called the Vasa Hall. He was a band leader. His name was on the contract. He played a big organ. And guess what he would be doing? Writing checks while we're carrying his organ in and out. Big man, that's what he did. But we had a lot of fun playing all over the West Coast. Had a great booking agent. We played a lot of the high school dances. Back then there were only 3 high schools, Olympia, North Thurston, and Tumwater. Bobby and I used to joke because, you know, you got a rock band, you're in high school, the girls go nuts. You know, I was 100 pounds lighter. We'd go to one high school, get in, they'd get mad at us, we'd go to the next one. You know, it's like a whole new, well, hey, here we are, you know. But I again kept up with Bobby probably 10 years after he got back. He would shoot me an email occasionally, and we got together, I think, and did a 40 or 50 year after picture. It's up on our website. You know, we got a picture of the band in the 60s when we were the Stingrays, and one as we are now with the wide angle lens. So anyway, I like Joe, I miss Bobby. I'm glad I got to share some more stories with him, you know, in probably the last 15 years before he passed. It was really a good thing. I got to visit with him, as you know, some of the band members did when he had come up, and I'm glad he's home. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon. I'm Lorraine Armstrong, and I was never really close to Bob. He was always there. I too am with the others at McKinley Elementary. I've known him since the early 50s. We were, 9 and 10 years old, and now we're all in our 70s. But I knew he was musically talented. I knew his dad was a teacher. And in your presence, you just knew he was a gentle soul. And I kind of knew him from afar, but always appreciated who he was. And I'm so glad I'm here today.
Should we tell the truth?
Who's next?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, the truth.
Go ahead, sir.
Go ahead.
Well, Carly and I were going to tell you the truth. I'm Katie Lynch Maxey, and Carly Swanson Swagel. And Carly's family and Bobby's family were friends forever. And I've known Bobby since we were not quite 5 years old. And all of what everybody has said is true. However, there are some other realities to this man. I love Bobby dearly. And I remember back, he started school at St. Mike's, and he was the first kid in the first grade to be taken down to the head nun for swats because he talked too much. And I think it was about 2 weeks later that Vera moved him into the public school system because she knew Bobby wasn't going to stop talking. And indeed that was true. And we went through all the evening and weekend CCD classes together in junior high and in high school. I was kind of Bobby's cover man. He would come in the front door with me, and then I'd go to class and he'd go out the back door, and then I'd meet him and tell him what we did so he could tell Vera and Bob what we had learned that evening. And when Bobby decided, gosh, he was not quite 50, and he finally decided, even though music was his life, and he did everything from Watermelon Man and the country western to anything in the world you can think of, plus the time in Vegas when he was doing more of what he did up here with the Stingrays. He decided that if your name wasn't on the head of the bus, that you probably weren't going to make more than $12,000 a year, and that maybe his folks had a point and he needed to get a real job. So he decided to go to school, and at that time it was so fun because we talked every night about his different classes, and I kind of thought I should have gotten an auxiliary degree of some kind or other. But what he discovered when he went to school was that he was just a hell of a lot smarter than he thought he was. And he was sitting in classes with a bunch of 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old kids who were where Bobby had been at that age. And he was just acing everything, and he meant, man, I can do this. Yep. And as a result of that, he got great GPAs, he got good grants, and he did very, very well. And the first year that he got a real job and a real income was like, whoa, I'm not, it's like Steve Martin in The Jerk, my name's in the phone book, I'm a real person kind of thing. Bobby was incredible, and I can't think of all the nights we spent on the phone and the times when I would run away from home and go down and be one of his groupies with the biker band era was really kind of scary. But he was a great guy, and I miss him dreadfully. And it's really neat that he's home. He wanted to be here. He wanted to have his ashes spread here, and one of his very favorite places was Ruby Beach up at Clay Lock on the Olympic Peninsula. And so I have my baggie because I'm going to take a little bit of him up there and fulfill that promise to him. And so he'll be all over the place, so watch out where you walk. It may be Bobby, but most of all, where I know Bobby will be for me is right here, because after 62 years, my God, he's here, and I can't. Very little time goes by without some kind of comment he made being part of my world.
If he were here, he'd tell this story. My mom and dad and his mom and dad would often get together for drinks and dinner, barbecue on Sunday. This was one of those occasions, and the barbecue was always really good. So we ate, and then Mom came in and said, here's dessert. It's apple pie or something with whipped cream. And so he said, no thank you. And he was very polite, and she said, would you rather eat it or wear it? And he said, well, no thank you, I'd rather not eat it. And so he wore it.
Whoa!
No. But he won.
Yeah, he won. Yeah. I tell you that because honestly, he would tell it now, today. He would. Yeah. He was so smart.
The floor is yours, sir.
I'm Lyle Smith, and I was the youngest member of the Stingrays. Bobby was graduating just as I started at Olympia High School. So there's like 4 years difference in our age. Well, when you get to where we are now, 4 years ain't very much. But when you're a young kid getting in with Rich and Dean and Bobby, these guys were my very first heroes of music. Some things I remember, we played down around the harbor a lot, and we always on the way back stopped at the Satsip Diner.
Yeah.
Where Bobby, who I think he got this probably from Pat O'Day on KJR, he would always order a mung sandwich with extra mung. Now, none of us knew what that was, but the waitresses would be taken aback. So Bobby, I hope you have a lot of mung wherever you are. The only time I ever saw Bobby scared, we had our band vehicle was a 1941 Pontiac hearse that was painted California poppy orange. And we kept it at our booking agent's house out in Tanglewild. And we were going to have some work done on it. And so Bobby said, I'm gonna go move the hearse. So he went out, and I went out behind him, and I stood on the back bumper and just held on to the back door hinge, thinking he was just gonna. Well, we ended up out on Martin Way, and down to where this paint shop was, and I had been beaten on the door, but it didn't do any good. And when we got out, when we got stopped, Bobby came back and looked, saw me there, and he just turned white. He thought sure he just about done me in. Anyway, Bobby, love you, miss you, lots of mung.
Who else? Well, I'm Dean Winter, and I was the bass player in the band with Bobby when he was still playing keyboard. And I have a lot of memories about him and the band together, but I echo what Rich said. The first thought that comes to my mind always with Bobby is playing those dances and lugging that damn Hammond organ upstairs, and then a big Leslie speaker as well.
Oh, jeez.
And Bob, at the start of the dance, Bob always had to go over the contract. And he'd be done with the negotiations about the time we got it up the stairs. And he'd always be done writing checks just as we kind of hit the bottom step, hauling it down. So, but he was a nice guy. We always got along well, and I'm glad I got to see him when he came back into town here a couple of years ago. We got together for a short time, and he was just a great all-around guy. We had great times with that hearse that Lyle's talking about. We prepped the body and had it painted, and I still can't believe it, but we drove it all over, clear down to...
Had the rollers in the back for
Oh, yeah.
We could slide the organ in.
Yeah, it was great. We had good times. I mean, great memories.
Who's next? Anyone else?
I'll say a few words.
Okay, good.
I'm Greg Taylor, same class as Bobby, and I first met Bobby in high school. I didn't know him before that. And my senior year, he and I were locker partners. And it was interesting that I'd see him at the locker every once in a while, among other places. And I'd say, Bobby, what's going on? And he'd be telling stories about some of the gigs that he had. And I realized he was having way more fun than I was having. Fast forward later, I heard that he was ill, and I gave him a call. Got him on the phone, and we talked for a while, actually about a month before he passed. And Bobby had a motto that it's never too late to have a happy childhood. And he said he had a Jimmy Buffett tribute band that they played a lot of his music. And I said, have you ever read Jimmy Buffett's A Pirate Turns 50? because it was about, he told the story of what an adult does with all the toys that you can afford as an adult. And he said, yeah, you read. And so I sent it to him and called him back. I was going to call him back to say how far into it were you, and unfortunately he had passed. But he was quite optimistic how it was going to turn out. I was surprised that he told me that his oncologist was he felt confident and comfortable with him, and I was surprised the outcome that happened. But that's my brief story.
There's one thing that Bobby said to me an awful lot over the years. We were talking one day about how we prepared for retirement, and he said, I did a terrible job. He said, I really never thought I was going to live this long the way I burned it. And I said, oh, come on. He said, no. He said, really? I could be in better.
Well, there's that old saying, if I'd known I was going to live this long, I'd have taken better care of
Much
myself.
better care of myself.
I love Bobby.
Take some of them home with me.
The gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah.
He asked me.
Welcome home, buddy.
I tried to sell it in Seattle, and it needed new pickups to get a little feedback. So I put it on the bus down.
Scoop's right in there if you want to scoop.
See you around, Bob.
Oh, yeah.
Love you, Bobby.
Yeah. I knew Mark well, and a lot of it.
Bob, you're now a part of the Lord's band.
Trying to get down here, and I just pulled it, thank God, I got it literally left hand path. Because I was on the freeway thinking, why am I going to run down?
Thanks, Pat.
That's good. I thought I'd never get here. Rich, I got a good story too.
My brother.
I don't.
Hey, how are you?
All right.
You were just
Go ahead, Don. We're kind of
Rest in peace, Bobby.
hold the scoop or the hand?
The hand that holds the
Okay,
scoop.
Bobby, it'll take you a couple minutes to get this going. You're going to try not to put it on Joe.
I'm just a little downwind, but just be careful.
Okay, take my hand.
Any balls?
Bend over, girl.
Bend over, bend over.
There you go.
Okay.
There.
And another guy that Forbes, what's his name?
Anybody else?
Anybody else? Okay.
Call ourselves. We played this.
Oh, sure.
Have no world to read piano and then anyway, I played.
Give everybody a chance to do it.
And band we had out.
This was high school.
Yeah, no, I
High school.
remember.
Yeah.
I ran into, you remember Scott?
Oh, yeah.
I'm Albert John.
Anywhere else? Lorraine? Anywhere? Okay.
the first drummer I ever was.
Is this the grand finale?
Yes, we will.
Okay, this is the grand finale, you guys.
Oh, okay. Scott playing drums.
Okay, Bobby.
Okay, Bobby, welcome home.
Godspeed.
Swim upstream, Bobby.
You got it backwards, Joe. He always did the big thing first.
Yeah, yeah.
And the little thing last.
Well, he had to give me one at the last moment, didn't
yeah.
he? Wouldn't you know it?
There must have been a reason for it.
You want us to wash
it
it off?
wouldn't be
Yeah,
right
he's
without-
thanking you for it,
Yeah,
Joe. He's thanking you for
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it.
There you go.
Got it.
All right.
it. And the sea will take him into the universe.
He's not looking for those two.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Thanks.
yeah, thanks.
Awesome.
So, yeah, you're Bobby on and off for years with his music and
Yeah.
his, the stuff with Amos for